Hello, everybody. This is my first ever video. It is about Plato, Aristotle, the movie The Drama, the movie The Invite, and Love Island. Recently, I've seen two movies and a show which I feel I've left with a bad feeling after watching. It is as if they are all a step in the dating marriage pipeline. Love Island is a show in which people try to form relationships for one of two reasons: finding love or winning. Regardless of what the contestants do in the show and for what ultimate goal, it is filled with horrible traits like cheating, constant manipulation, and incredibly superficial relationships. And those who watch it probably think that the dating world is like that, clearly thinking that these people are on the show for the same reasons that they go out with a girl for coffee, ultimately twisting their ideas for what people look for in a relationship. The first of the two movies that I watched was Studio A24's The Drama. In this movie, although it was well made, I couldn't help but feel how uncommon it was to watch movies in which people actually have a functional romantic relationship. A couple that seems to be compatible and loves each other to the point of wanting to get married suddenly flips everything when finding out that one of the two halves thought of being a school shooter when they were younger. This then leads that partner to completely obsess over the fact and doubt everything about their relationship and their future marriage, eventually leading to him cheating, justifying it, them constantly bickering, arguing, and him completely shutting down. This makes doubting and complete obsession of negative traits of your partner, along with the idea that everyone has something hidden about them that can completely break everything you've built, seem like a completely normal thing in this stage of long term dating, eventually turning into an engagement. The other movie that I wanted to mention was once again A24's The Invite. A well made movie, but again, it normalizes having open sexual experiences in marriage, people being completely shut down from each other, and being incapable of even having a connection with each other. Regardless of these forms of if these forms of media praise these kinds of relationships or not, which obviously I don't think they do, I did feel as if the more you got into the story, the more normalized these things become. Almost like oh, look, that's a totally normal marriage, or if not normal, at least common. Now, how is this relevant to Plato and Aristotle? Well, Plato argued in his work, The Republic, that theater was philosophically dangerous due to it being a fake scenario in and of itself, which can be acted in a way in which real world people might never actually behave. The second idea is that it manipulates your emotions, which, although seems minor, research actually shows that if you are constantly having a certain emotional reaction, in the future it tends to have more of a rapid activation, a higher intensity, and it can be longer lasting. Neuroscience also finds that when one is completely overwhelmed with emotion, it can negate a lot of your prefrontal cortex, leading to illogical and non regulatory behaviors and thoughts. Finally, the research also states that when you are in a context in which you have felt strong emotions before, whenever you are in a similar, although not necessarily identical context, it will make you feel strong emotions again. For example, seeing marriage as being a super highly stressful situation in movies or in your everyday life will highly make you feel a similar way about your future marriage. Finally, and what I think is the most relevant to this video essay, Plato feared that plays would lead to moral corruption. People would internalize traits, behaviors, and worldviews that will desensitize them towards their own demise. On the other hand, Aristotle believed that people have repressed immoral feelings or impulses, and that by people watching them, they could learn the possible consequences of their flaws. And because of that, they're able to push the impulses out, almost as if they were scaring themselves straight in order to protect themselves or their relationships. So, who was right? At least in how it pertains to modern media, Plato's view that the dramas in media can cause a form of irrational imitation and the changing of internal values through its consumption is supported by a plethora of studies. For example, the study, Does Television Viewing Cultivate Unrealistic Expectations About Marriage? Found that watching a lot of television can have negative correlation with realistic marriage expectations. Soap operas and dramas were statistically significant in people later viewing marriage to be a burden or costly, viewing things like arguments, cheating, divorce as almost things to be expected, leading people to not be as prone to commit long term. This is such a crazy thing to think about, considering that just viewing fictional dramas was able to completely skew and shape people's expectations in their future or current relationships. Another study found that people who were long term consumers of reality dating shows such as The Bachelor believed that it would be easy to achieve finding a higher quality partner outside of their current. It believes that it seems to have created an idea that partners are disposable and replaceable, and these people had lower relationship satisfaction, further showing how these influences can diminish virtue and increase negative behavioral imitation. Another study also found that behavior is heavily influenced by what you think the outcome will be. When the media has a toxic, manipulative character that is rewarded with a romantic reunion or is highly popular to the point of making a career out of his performance, like Sincere from Love Island, who for the most part endured no negative consequences for his behavior and actually ended up getting the girl in the end, the study found that high exposure to these themes led to the replication of such behaviors by consumers. Since they can get away with being hedonistic and sociopathic, I might as well benefit myself by doing the same. This short term gratification or immoral way of thinking is what could be seen as the corruption of one's virtue for Plato. Aristotle's idea of catharsis, on the other hand, viewed forms of media as a purifying experience that would release emotions like pity and fear while enduring them in a safe environment free from affecting one's personal relationships and life choices. Studies found that when participants were instigated and made to feel frustration, and then watched a highly tense and dramatic film with high stakes emotions, they actually were able to show a much lower hostility and residual anger through the standardized scales that the group that was shown a neutral or positive film. This shows some evidence for Aristotle's idea of deflating and relaxing one's emotions through catharsis. Studies also find that when readers immerse themselves into a complex story arc through some form of media that has a protagonist who possessed a tragic flaw, also known as hamartia, that led to a character having a catastrophic outcome due to it, through feeling strong emotions such as pity or fear, they actually experience feeling a higher risk perception regarding toxic behaviors and a stronger moral conviction to combat or protect themselves or others against these attitudes. In this study, they measured empathy, immersion, and belief revision through a 15-item scale. The findings demonstrated that people who had a higher empathy towards the character and were highly immersed in the story tended to show a very strong belief revision, which heightened intolerance for undesirable traits. To finish things off, it seems like both philosophers had partially correct worldviews in relation to media consumption. The research seems to suggest that if a toxic relationship or character is viewed in a neutral or positive light, Plato's behavioral replication seems to take place, in which viewers' morality is corrupted and more emotional decisions are made. And on the other hand, when these relationships or characters are shown to have to deal with the consequences of their actions fully through a form of catharsis, the viewers, with a stronger moral framework, and through fear and pity seem to avoid this toxicity altogether. Thanks for watching, guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and if you have anything else to add, leave it down below.